Okay, hello, welcome to this quick explanation of Wayfinders. So first I'm going to go ahead and get you settled a little bit, explain what all of this is, because it looks like a lot, but trust me, it's really not that complicated. It's just, I have to lay it all out like this physically because of the virtual nature of this. First off, let's go ahead and full screen here. Now we can go ahead and see everything much better. These are your cards. There are many like it, but these ones are yours, or this one specifically for me. I'm the example player. I will sit down in this chair by just clicking on it. And then we have our board up here. This is temporary. I'm not going to explain it too much because only a couple of the starter cards care about positioning. Now we'll go ahead and move on to the elements tracker. This keeps track of what all the elements are. Here we can see that we have fire, wind, life, water, earth, and death. Right, and they can all be either weak or strong, and then we also have neutral in the center here. And what these represent is how much of and which magic is in the air, right? So when fire is weak, there's a little bit of fire magic pervading the air, and when fire is strong, there's a lot of it, and some cards care about having a certain element be present, and some of them require it to not be present. So for instance, let's look at this Hex Blossom. Up at the top left, you can see it says not death, so if it was over here in death, you could not play it. But anywho, let's go ahead and explain cards. So you have this nice end turn button down here. That'll go ahead and draw you your cards for the turn. And then it'll also chuck your remaining cards if you end your turn. Draw them again. Okay. So, starting off with Quick Strike, we have the cost in the top right. There are also restrictions on when it can be played in the top left, but this card has none. And in the top right there, you can see it has an orb with 1 in it. That's just 1 mana. It has a name, Quick Strike. That's to explain what it does to you very quickly and concisely. A number is used for bookkeeping. Element is cared about by a couple of cards, but mostly just tells you what the theme of the card is and like what sort of game mechanics it probably interacts with. Rarity. That's a deck building thing that we don't need to get into right now. It doesn't affect how you obtain cards other than their cost. Flavor text is in the middle there on the bottom, and then the effect is way on the bottom, which you can see for Quick Strike is just that it deals 5 damage. I forgot to reset this. Oh, okay. So, now explaining the damage system, we will go ahead and play our Quick Strike for 1 mana, put it in our discard pile. Some cards will exhaust it instead, very few in the starter decks though. So I will explain that if somebody needs it. It deals 5 damage, right, and we can target anything on the board. The only option we have is ourselves or this wolf that's attacking us. I know it doesn't look like a wolf. Just ignore that, it's fine. So we will go ahead and apply 5 incoming damage to the wolf. That doesn't trigger immediately unless the enemy's fragile. Or unless the target's fragile. But it is not right now. So we will go ahead and move on with our turn. Once this damage triggers though, you can see the incoming damage is more than its remaining HP. So if it doesn't block on its turn, then it will die from this damage. So now to explain blocking, you can see that we also have 5 incoming damage. We do have 30 HP, so this wouldn't kill us if it comes through, but we'd rather not take that amount of damage. So we'll go ahead and play this block. Block costs a mana, just like Quick Strike does. Then it also has some flavor text, and we gain 4 blocks. So what block does is it reduces incoming damage, right? And if we played another block card, it would reduce it to -3. But that's not relevant most of the time. So then we have that taken care of, right? And then at the end of our turn, this will tick down, right? And the incoming damage will actually trigger, but that's not yet. So now we go ahead and play our Mist, which is 1 mana once again. It strengthens water, or generates water, is what it should say, but I'll fix that later. What that does is it takes this and it moves it towards water, right? So now instead of the elements being neutral, I've cast a mist onto the battlefield which fills the air with water magic, right? And some cards will care about that. Now, this is sort of a silly thing to do, but we will go ahead and play an Inflame to immediately cancel out the water that we just generated for example purposes. You can see in the top right here, it costs 2 cards, that's what those rectangles, what that rectangle means with a 2 in it, and 1 mana to play. Oh, I forgot to pay the mana for the Mist. Very important. And this will generate fire. And then in the top left you can see that there's an X through fire, so this can't be played when fire is already present. But anywho, so we go ahead and play our Inflame, we discard our 2 cards for it. Oh, I should have done this the other way around again. And then now we're pumping fire magic into the air. And since fire and water are opposed, that'll go ahead and cancel out. So now we're back to neutral. There's no magic available in the air. Now, for example purposes, say we played a Breeze. We don't have enough cards because this needs 1 card to be discarded. Not Earth is fine. But then that would strengthen Wind, right? Now, just to show off another interaction, right, let's say that we have these back in our hands and we had enough to pay for them because I'm just showing you how the elements work now. If we generate fire, right, we've sort of set the air ablaze with fire magic, right? But now, if we add a gentle breeze to that, fire and wind support each other. So it will actually strengthen the fire, making it strong instead of weak. And then this is of course useful because, well, if somebody plays water to try and weaken fire now, it only moves down to weak, so fire is still present. And also certain cards care about that, but none of the starter cards. Whether it's weak or strong, I mean. And then, just as another example, right, if we had water be present and then we generate wind, that's still opposed. So what I like to think of it as is like the board is cut in half by water, right? The earth and the life support it, and water obviously supports itself, so it strengthens itself when it gets generated. And then death, fire, and wind oppose it. Okay, quick little just addendum here, right? Every element carves the board in half, right? So life is supported by water and wind, but opposed by fire, death, and earth, right? Same for wind, which is supported by fire and life, but then opposed by death, earth, and water. So there's this sort of ecosystem and balance between them, which I find quite fun and evocative, because like it leads to a bunch of fun interactions, like your wind mage being pissed off at your fire mage for generating fire because now they can't get wind present without just buffing fire, other silly stuff like that. And also it leads to a very magical feel where you have to push and pull the magics to get them where you want them to be. And that also encourages a lot of diversity in, like, so an optimized deck will probably have at least 2 element generations, right? At least its opposition, if not like some more, just so that it can respond better when its allied elements are generated. Okay, that's all. So, now we explain ending our turn, and I'll put a card in my hand to explain how that works, and a card back in the draw pile. It will chuck our hand and draw us a new hand. of 7 cards, but we only had 1 in our deck, so only draw 1. In order to actually get cards from your discard into your draw pile, you have to rest for a turn. So at the start of your turn, instead of doing anything else, you declare that you will rest, and then that'll go ahead and put everything back into your draw pile. And then we ended our turn, so this will tick, right? And then on the enemy's turn, let's say they attacked us or something, whatever, they do like 7 damage, and then through the various cards, then they will take this 5 damage. Now they've been reduced to 0 or below, so they will die. Now when that happens, death is generated whenever any creature dies. So that will actually move this from water towards death, right? And if it was neutral, it would move it here, and if fire was present, it would strengthen it. And that leads to some weird interactions with life, where if we start out with it neutral here, right, and our friend over here plays a Hex Blossom, they'll go ahead and put a Hex Blossom on the map, and you can see that Hex Blossom says create a 1 HP fragile Hex Blossom, generate life. Fragile we don't really need to worry about, it just can't gain block and it takes damage instantly. But it generates life, right? So if somebody kills this now by dealing damage to it, it will go ahead and generate death. So Hex Blossom is sort of a temporary element generation in that way. Okay. So then we'll go ahead and move on towards running away, winning/losing, etc., etc., etc. So now with one side of the board empty, that is considered the end of the battle. That can happen by all of one side being either killed, fleeing, so like moving off the back of the board essentially. We didn't talk about movement, but don't worry about that right now. Or being put to sleep by a sleep card. And that can happen for the players too, right? If any combination of all the players leaving or dying happens, that's also the end of the fight. Alright, thanks for watching, and I'll go ahead and put out some more stuff on Wayfinders at some point, probably. If anybody's interested in, like, the design behind a lot of this stuff, let me know too, because I can ramble about that basically forever. I don't even get into initiative or movement and that sort of stuff, but this is basically all that you need to know to play decks in general without getting into specifics. So yeah, have a good day. Bye-bye.